Good morning, students. Today let me explain you about corals, coral reefs, its types and importance of coral reefs. Dear students, you will be observing some important types of corals that are there in this first slide of my presentation. Corals are the animals belonging to the phylum Coelenterata, mostly to the class Anthozoa, but some belongs to class Hydrozoa. These are solitary or colonial polypoid forms and live in a skeleton of calcium carbonate secreted by themselves. Some of them grow into huge mounds, while others large branched colonies. The hydrozoan corals are colonial forms and secrete massive exoskeletons, and within the exoskeletons, two types of polypoid forms, the gasterozoids and branched dactylozoids, are present. The epidermis of these polypoid forms is modified and referred to as calicoblast layer, which secrete the calcareous exoskeleton. These corals are found among other corals forming huge mounds. The anthozoan corals includes colonial corals as well as solitary corals. Anthozoan corals have exoskeleton with calcareous spicules, and they also have endoskeleton of separate calcareous spicules embedded in its massive mesoglia. Anthozoan corals are basically of two types, that is soft and hard or stony corals. Stony corals are the main builders of coral reefs. A coral colony increases in size by means of budding new polyps along the margin of the colony. Feeding in corals mostly occurs in night time, and corals have diverse shapes and sizes. Coral colonies are most abundant in tropical seas. Some are found in Arctic and temperate seas, and generally they flourish at a temperature above 22 degrees Celsius. So these are some of the important aspects of corals. Now, corals are related to sea anemones, and they all share the same simple structure, that is the polyp. The polyp is like a tin can open at just one end. The open end has a mouth surrounded by a ring of tentacles. The tentacles have stinging cells called nematocysts, or which are also called stinging cells, as well as these are known as nematoblasts. And these nematoblasts allow the coral polyp to capture small organisms that swim too close to them. And inside the body of the polyp are digestive and reproductive tissues, but no organs, because these coelentrates are exhibiting a kind of organization of the body called tissue grade of body organization. Corals differ from sea anemones in their production of a mineral skeleton. Now coming to coral reefs, what they are. Coral reefs are structures found underwater constructed of calcium carbonate secreted by limestone objects known widely as corals. Most coral reefs are composed from stony corals, which consists of tiny animals belonging to the family Cnidaria called polyps. Polyps excrete a hard exoskeleton to protect their bodies. They are one of the most diverse ecosystems in the world, and the vibrant colors of coral reefs around people internationally. Three main types of coral reefs. Of all the coral reefs in the world, Only three types are distinguished itself from the others, and these include barrier reefs, atoll reefs, and fringing reefs. A barrier reef is a coral reef parallel to the shore but is separated by a channel of water. That means a barrier of channel is there between the shore and that of these coral reefs. Coming to atoll reefs, an atoll is a ring-shaped coral reef consisting of a coral rim that encircles a lagoon. You see that kind of lagoon structure that is of the marine body water, which is there in the center of this atoll reef. And the third type is fringing reefs. A fringing reef is a reef that forms around a land mass. So a land mass is there in the middle of the type of coral what is called as fringing reef. Continuation. Fringing reef. The fringing reef that is directly attached to a shore or borders it with an intervening shallow channel of lagoon. Then barrier reef, the reef separated from a mainland or island shore by a deep lagoon. The best example is Great Barrier Reef of Australia. Atoll reef. It is more or less a circular or continuous barrier reef extending all the way around a lagoon without a central island. So this is what the atoll reef is. You can easily make out this atoll reef here, and this is what the reef what is called as a barrier reef. You can see the coral mass here, the coral reef, and there is a channel of water in between, and this is what the main body water. And in case of fringing reef, you see the fringes that are there near the seashore where there is a landmass. Then corals formation. Coral reefs are the largest structures that have been created by natural activity as well as the oldest ecosystems. Corals are small animals, that is polyps, that have tiny tentacles for the purpose of feeding from microscopic plankton. And each polyp leaves behind a calcareous skeleton when they die. And this elaborates coral reefs through time. Coral skeletons have various geometric forms, that is spherical, star-shaped, and pillar-shaped. So different shapes are there for these coral skeletons. Coming to types of coral reefs again, there are more than 1,500 species of reef-building corals are there, and the great number of types of coral reefs are as follows. Number 1, star coral reef, hat coral reef, tree coral reef, brain coral reef, and patchy coral reef. There are some types of coral reefs pictures have been shown here in this slide. The first one is picture of a coral reef, that is tree coral reef. You can see the tree-like branching in this type of coral reef, and there is another type of coral reef here, what you see here, called as hat coral reef. As the mouse appears like a hat, hence it is called hat coral reef. And the next one is star coral reef. As the name itself suggests, it is star shaped, and you observe that vibrant colors that are being exhibited by these different types of coral reefs. There are some largest coral reefs are there in this world. Of this, the number 1, Great Barrier Reef near Australia, Red Sea Coral Reef near Egypt, and New Caledonia Barrier Reef near Caledonia, and Mesoamerican Barrier Reef near Mexico, and Florida Reef in Andros Coral Reefs near Andros, and Zongsha Islands in the South China Sea. So these are some of the largest known coral reefs in this world. Coming to the Great Barrier Reef that is there in Australia, it has a total area coverage of about 132.974 miles square, and the location is Queensland of Australia, and the UNESCO World of Heritage Site inscription is given in the year 1981. And thousands of reefs and hundreds of islands are made of over 600 types of hard and soft corals in this type of reef, what is called as Great Barrier Reef. Then types of some Red Sea corals or Red Sea coral reefs. The first one being soft coral, as you see here, as it is natured, its nature is soft in nature, hence it is called soft coral. And you see the hard coral that is very hard in nature. Next, the Ningaloo Reef. The Ningaloo Reef is the largest fringing reef in the world, stretching to an extent of about 260 kilometers, and it is located in the western coast of Australia, and it is very popular destination for snorkelers and scuba divers because of its proximity to the shore. So you can see the picture of this fringing reef, which is called Ningaloo Reef, found in the western coast of Australia. Coming to the distribution of these corals, corals occur throughout the oceans, but colonial reef building, that is hermatypic corals, are confined to the tropics and subtropics, where calcification rates are greatly enhanced. And the reefs grow best in warm, marine, shallow, clear, sunny and agitated water. So more temperature is required. So mostly these coral reefs are confined to tropical seas. However, these coral reefs, just like any other ecosystem, provide present in our planet, rely on a variety of biotic and abiotic factors to keep them healthy and functional. Without stable temperature, pH, light, intensity, water flow, salinity, and chemical composition of the seawater, coral reefs could not exist. That means a suitable temperature, suitable pH, suitable light intensity, and suitable water flow and salinity should be there in the waters where these corals are building. And these coral reefs, they cannot exist without a proper factor mentioned above. But without a stable trophic cascade, coral reefs could not survive also. Then coming to types of corals, the first one being hard corals, which I already told you. These are also known as scleractinian and stony coral, and they produce a rigid skeleton made of calcium carbonate and in crystal form called argonite. And the anatomic structures such as septa, tentacles and mesenteries are found in sets of 6. So hard corals are also often termed as hexacorals. And one of the characteristic feature of nematoscopic corals is the presence of unicellular algae, that is Symbiodergium microbacterium, which in the gastrodermal tissue. By their influence on account of growth, the coral growth and calcification rates, these symbiotic zoo and xanthians play a tremendous role or a fundamental role in the reef building process. So here you can see the pictures of some hard corals. One is called brain coral, and another is staghorn coral, and the other one is folious coral. So these are the types of hard corals that are generally seen. Then coming to soft corals, these are also known as Alcyoniaceae, and these are aromatic type of corals that do not produce a rigid calcium carbonate skeleton and do not form reefs. Though they may be present in a reef ecosystem, these are not a component of reef. And the anatomic structures such as tentacles and mesenteries are found in sets of 8. So soft corals are often called as octocorals. Coming to the diversity of coral reefs, reefs are the home to a large variety of organisms including fish, seabirds, sponges, cnidarians, which include some types of corals and jellyfishes, and it is a place or home for worms, crustaceans including shrimps, cleaner shrimp, spinal lobsters, and crabs. It is also a home for molluscans including cephalopods, and also a home for echinoderms including starfish, sea urchins, and sea cucumbers, and it is also a home for sea squids, sea turtles, and sea snakes. Aside from humans, mammals are rare on coral reefs, with visiting cetaceans such as dolphins being the main exception. A few of these varied species fed directly on corals, while others graze on algae of the coral reef. And the reef biomass is positively related to species diversity. So these are some important diversity factors of coral reefs. Then coming to importance of reefs, reefs provides protective barrier around islands and coast, and it slows down strong currents and waves before it hits the shore, and it prevents erosion of the soil or the sand that is there in the seashore. So you can make out that kind of barrier that is being formed by these coral reefs here. And the other importance of reefs are as follows. It creates more living biomass than any other marine ecosystem and contributes to local economics and support more species than any other marine environment, possibilities in medicines and science, and control carbon dioxide levels in ocean water because they consume a large amount of carbon dioxide. And the coral polyp turns carbon dioxide in the water into a limestone shell. Coral reefs occupy only 2% of the ocean's area but are the homes to nearly one-fourth of all known marine species. And to date, about 10% of all reefs have been destroyed by human or any other such natural factor. Then, just like species in the rainforest, the reef animals and plants contain medicinal compounds, many of which are just being discovered, and several important drugs have already been developed from chemicals found in the coral reef organisms. A compound called AZT, a treatment for people with HIV infections, is based on the chemicals extracted from a Caribbean reef sponge. Compounds from coral reefs have also yielded treatments for cardiovascular diseases, ulcers, leukemia, and skin cancer too. And in addition, coral's unique skeletal structure has been used to make the most advanced forms of bone grafting materials. And more than half of all new cancer drug research focuses mainly on the marine organisms and particularly the corals. There are some theories on coral formation, that how these coral reefs are formed, of which the first one being glacial control theory, which was proposed by Daly. So Daly propounded this theory of coral formation in the year 1915 after he was convinced that coral reefs were formed after Pleistocene Ice Age. According to him, sea level fell by 33 to 38 fathoms, roughly about 198 feet to 228 feet, due to glaciation. That is, confinement of seawater in the form of ice on the continents. That is during Pleistocene Ice Age. The existing corals died due to lowering of temperature of marine water, that is because of these ice deposits, and the wave-cut platforms were formed along continental coasts and as well as in islands due to abrasion by sea waves. After the end of Ice Age, the sea level again rose by 33 to 38 fathoms due to return of sea water which was imprisoned on the continents in the form of ice during the Ice Age. In other words, the ice melted due to rise of temperature, the phenomenon called global warming, and the melt water after reaching the oceans rise their levels to previous stage itself. Coming to the second theory, that is Darwin's Dana subsidence theory, which was actually proposed in 1831. And this will explain you about the evolution of the three main types of reefs. And as first proposed by Charles Darwin, hence it is called Darwin's theory. And Darwin proposed the three main reef types, which are simply different stages in the geological evolution of Pacific oceanic islands. And according to this Darwin's theory, fringing reefs began to grow near the shorelines of new islands when conditions for growth were ideal. You see, there is a fringing reef here which is there near the seashore, and that fringing reef, it gradually subside in the sea water because of the rise in the sea water level, and that leads to the formation of a type of barrier reef or the reef called barrier reef. And finally that barrier reef later it gives rise to a kind of reef what is called as atoll reef. So this is what the highlight of this theory what is known as Darwin's theory. And as the islands began to gradually subside into the sea, the coral was able to grow at the same rate and remained in place at the sea surface but farther from the shore. And it was now a barrier reef. So fringing reef gets converted into barrier reef, which I already explained in the previous slide. And eventually the island disappeared below the sea surface, leaving only the ring of corals surrounding it, and it was now referred to as an atoll reef. So there is a gradual transformation of these reefs from fringing to barrier type and barrier to atoll type. Darwin's theory of reef evolution was verified for the Indo-Pacific reefs in the early 1950s, and after the analysis of deep core drilling at Bikini and Iyawatock atolls, we now know that, however, that in some cases the three types can be formed by different processes as well. The reef formation, it occurred millions of stony coral polyps are the main animals responsible for building the hardened coral reefs you see in this ocean. Reefs are excretions of calcium carbonate produced by each polyp. Each polyp, after the process of asexual reproduction called budding, it produces daughter branches, and all such daughter branches start excreting this skeletal part, that is calcium carbonate, what is called as calcareous corallite, and that leads to the formation of huge mounds and leads to the formation of reefs. Reefs are the excretions of calcium carbonate produced by each polyp, which thing I said just now, and new polyps secrete reef on top of the older polyps. So there is a gradual increase in the height and the width of this or the depth of this reef, that is due to the accumulation of the skeletal part from other members of that colony. New polyps secrete reef on top of older polyps. Now coming to the summary of Darwin's theory, it was suggested by Darwin that initially a number of islands were fringed with reefs due to the growth of corals around them under favorable conditions. And he noticed that all known coral reefs are found in the regions where a sinking of land probably had taken place. And in the previous age, corals grew as fringing reef on the sloping shore of an island in shallow tropical sea. And the subsidence of these islands or lowering of islands into the water led to the accumulation of water between the shore and the fringe reef, and the coral of seaward edge grew more rapidly because of the availability of food rather than the shore. Consequently, the original fringing reef got converted to barrier reef, separated from the shore by a water body called lagoon. Then, gradually, some of these islands totally submerged under water, and the barrier reefs were now called as atolls. And this concept of how different types of coral reefs are formed from fringing reef to barrier reef and then atolls by the subsidence, that is gradual lowering of islands, is known as subsidence theory. And this theory is also known as Darwin's Dana theory, because this theory is still most widely accepted throughout the world and is also supported by the observations made by James Dwight Dana and W.M. Davis. So this is what the summary of Darwin's theory, and this Darwin's theory was later analyzed by different scientists in different parts of this world, in different seas, and it is proved very true beyond doubts. So, of the two theories that are explained now, that is, one is Darwin's Dana theory, and the other one is what is known as the theory which is very popular earlier, and what is known as the glacial control theory of Daly. Now, coming to the last slide, some threats to coral reefs. There are two types of threats to the coral reefs. One is anthropogenic and another one is natural. Anthropogenic refers to man-made or human-made activities, and it is destructive and non-sustainable fishery practices, and coral bleaching, which is a socio-economic impact, which is reef-based tourism and fisheries. And coral mining is also one such cause for the threats to coral reefs, that is construction of lime industry, ornamental purposes, etc. are the another threat to the coral reefs. And apart from this, pollution like agricultural wastages and coastal development also led to the pollution of this marine water and leads to the it is a threat to the existence of coral reefs. Apart from this, a process called sedimentation, which happens because of deforestation, and such particles or the components present in such forests will be removed by water, that is rainwater, and then it is going to be sedimented in the coral reefs. So these are certain threats that are there for the existence of these coral reefs. So dear students, with this I have completed one more topic under phylum Coelenterata, and I am left with one more topic, what is known as the polymorphism in coelentrates, that I'll do it in next class. Thank you.